Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward, and this is Face to Face. Our guest this week is an award-winning Ojibway playwright, novelist, filmmaker, and much more. Drew Hayden Taylor is the author of more than 30 pieces of work. His latest novel, Cold, was just released in January 2024 and is described as Indigenous myth meets Stranger Things. He's also set to return to the airwaves on APTN as the host of Season 3 of Going Native. Drew, so awesome to have you with us here in studio.
It's a delight, sir.
Out on a book tour, supporting the new book, and here in Winnipeg, so great to be able to have you here with us in studio.
Any chance to come and play in Winnipeg?
Yeah, lots of fun in Winnipeg. Let's talk about the new book called Cold. Like we mentioned there, it's being pitched as Indigenous myth meets Stranger Things. Can you tell us a bit about the book?
Well, I prefer to, as my publisher referred to it as, an Indigenous X-Files.
Nice.
Because when I handed in the book and they read it and they came back and they said that they really liked the book, there was only one major problem, and I said, what's that? And they said, it needs a sequel. So I'm going to start working on a sequel, so hopefully this will be a chain of books that sort of, again, like a Native X-Files that goes out, explores and celebrates some of the characters in our legends and our myths in a contemporary environment. That's basically what Cold is. I did a previous book called Motorcycles and Sweetgrass, where I brought the trickster, I contemporized the trickster, and took him to a contemporary First Nations reserve and let him get into mischief, as is his nature. And then after that came out, Trickster on a reserve during the summer, I thought it'd be interesting to sort of take that template and sort of reverse it in its own way. And so this one, where I take a character from Indigenous Anishinaabe and Cree mythology, that's just called, it's one of these things where you don't know if you should say the name or say the word, much like Beetlejuice. Yeah. Let's just call him the W. Put them in an urban environment in wintertime, and let these urban Native people sort of go to battle, go to task, and identify this creature and go to battle.
Awesome stuff. Be great to see more. Let's look at the four main characters. There's an Indigenous professor, a hockey player, a detective, and a journalist turned author. Some of those sound pretty familiar. Any of them based on yourself?
None of them based on myself. I had a friend who used to say I used to do that with all my plays, that I would put myself in there. But in this particular case, I've never played hockey. I'm not a hockey player. I've never been to university, so I'm not a professor. I have dabbled in journalism, but the journalist is a woman of Caribbean descent, so I'm not that. And what was the fourth one?
Detective.
The detective, obviously. I'm not a detective in that. So no, they're not really based on me per se, just my imagination.
Like you said, it's a murder mystery featuring an Indigenous creature of legend, the W, we'll say. Can you tell us why you wanted to include the W in a story?
Well, as I said, it's a follow-up to Motorcycle and Sweetgrass, where I wanted to take a character from Indigenous mythology, cosmology, and put him or her, in a contemporary environment and see what happens. It was just something fun to do. You say it's a murder mystery. In some cases, it's being treated as that. Other people say it's very funny. Other people say it's a murder mystery. It's scary. It's funny. It's a whole bunch of different things. I just threw everything but the kitchen sink into it and had so much fun writing it.
And like we said, you originally envisioned this as a film. Is that something maybe you'd still like to see happen?
Oh, I'd like to see that with most of my books and plays. But at this, so it just came out a month ago, and people are reading it. So far I've had one full offer, and 3 other producers are reading it. So anything is possible. I would like to see it return back to the form I originally envisioned it in. The final scene would be just so amazing on a hockey rink, but fingers and toes and kidneys crossed.
Yeah. Well, a lot of Indigenous novels now seem to be making their way to the screen, so good luck with that.
Thank you very much.
You've written dozens of plays and books. This one you've been working on for a long time. Do many of your projects sit with you for that long?
Well, it's not so much they sit with me. I'm a firm believer that sometimes if a project doesn't work, it's not because it's a bad project, it's because it either is too soon, it's not ready to be told, or more commonly, it's in the wrong genre or medium. My very first novel, The Night Wanderer, was about an Anishinaabe vampire. I decided to take a European legend and culturally appropriate and indigenize it. And it was originally a play I had produced in Saskatoon 30 years ago. But I didn't like it. It didn't feel right. It didn't roll off the tongue or on the stage. So I put it on the back shelf. I just was not comfortable with it. And then when I got the opportunity to write a play or a novel, I could hear the voices from the play calling out to me, remember us, remember us. And I took it down. The characters were still good. The situation was still good. And the reason it didn't work out as a play was because it was not supposed to be a play. I had jumped the gun. It was supposed to be a novel, so I wrote it as a novel. Motorcycle and Sweetgrass was originally a screenplay I had written that didn't go anywhere. So I was writing that. I took that off. Characters were great. The situation was great. So I just put it into novel form. Same with this one. It was originally a movie script that didn't go anywhere. And again, the characters were there. The creature was there. The story was there. And so writing these books, it made it so much easier because I already had the template of what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it, what the narrative was, what the storyline was. And right now I'm working on a new novel that's actually I'm adapting a 1930s Berlin Bertolt Brecht, Kurt Weill comedy, which sounds so weird, but I have a couple months off.
Yeah, nice. Already working on the next one. You're a prolific writer when it comes to whether it be the stage or other works.
Well, I have no kids. I have no hobbies. I've got nothing else to do.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to have that much time, I guess. A lot of your work and your persona, of course, is humorous, about humor. And despite this being described as a thriller or murder mystery, a horror, like you said, also funny. Why is humor so important to you and the work that you do?
Well, I remember I ran into an elder on a blood reserve in Alberta who once told me, in his opinion, for Native people, humor is the WD-40 of healing. And I like that. I like to get involved in the world of healing through humor. I've been very fortunate to have traveled to over 150 First Nation communities across Canada and the States. And every single one I've been to, I've been greeted with a laugh, a smile, and a joke. And I just, it's my opinion that it's our sense of humor that's allowed us to survive 200, 300, 400 years of colonization. So that's why I like putting humor in. And I'm a firm believer that you can explore any and all topics through humor that you can do through, I don't even know what you call it, non-humor.
Right. Well, I mean, we know how important humor is in our communities, but another thing that comes up, another genre that comes up in a lot of your work is science fiction. What's drawn you to science fiction?
I've always been interested in what could be, not essentially what is. Years and years ago, I was having a conversation with Thompson Highway back when I was just starting out writing and I was doing my comedies. And he once said to me, you just do basically kitchen sink drama and comedy, right? And I remember I looked at it and I went, yeah, you're absolutely right. And he walks away going, I don't think I could do that. And then as the years went by, my stuff began to go off in weird different directions. And I don't think, this is my fourth novel, and I think all of my novels have something spectacular, unusual in them. So do my short stories, most of my plays nowadays. I think that the whole science fiction thing, I mean, my very, very first play, Toronto Dreamers Rock, is about 3 teenage boys getting to know each other at the top of a giant, sort of a small mountain. And they're 3 teenage boys from 3 different time periods. One from now, one from 100 years in the future, and one from 400 years in the past. And this was my way of exploring what being Native means to individual people and their time, right? And then another play of mine, Alternatives, the central character is a young 24-year-old Anishinaabe guy who wants to be a science fiction writer. And his partner, a white woman, a white professor of Native literature, wants him to write the great Canadian Indigenous novel, do something serious. And he wants to write sci-fi. And as you know, I came out with a book of science fiction short stories. Sherry Demerlane, Wabagishik Rice have all done books of science fiction. It's the genre to do now because for long periods of time, our writers, our people, have been looking to, in the past, what we've lost, what we're trying to get back, what we're trying to regain. We've always been looking behind us. And I always like taking that lens, turning it around, and let's see where we're going to be in 30, 40, 100 years from now. Yeah. And I edited and compiled a collection of essays on Indigenous futurisms called Me Tomorrow.
Well, you also did an episode or segment on Going Native, talking about Indigenous science fiction storytelling, and whether it's on the big screen, the small screen, in books like you mentioned there, Wabagishik Rice's book and others, it's really exploded in recent years. So, what do you think the reason for that is?
Well, for the longest time, a lot of our literature dealt with colonization, the effects of colonization. And I think we have to get that out of our system. When an oppressed people get their voice back, they're going to write about being oppressed. So there are all these books coming out about colonization, reserves, residential schools, all that sort of stuff. And I think we've gotten to the point now where our attention is expanding. We're beginning to look at different ways of expressing ourselves. And I've always been of the belief that our writers are as clever, as talented, and as interesting as mainstream writers. And the fact that genre fiction has now become very, very popular, right? People are writing murder mysteries, they're writing science fiction, fantasy, all these different things are coming out now because these things are part of everyday life and we want to explore them as Indigenous authors.
Lots of great Indigenous-led horror projects out there recently, too. Much more to talk about, Drew. We've just got to step aside for a quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here on Face to Face with author, playwright, host, and much more, Drew Hayden Taylor. Stick around.
I'm Kathleen Martins, a reporter with APTN News. Homeless, houseless, shelterless people, they aren't hard to find in Winnipeg. They're on the sidewalks, in bus shelters, and down alleyways. They're living in tents and squatting in empty buildings. They're even sleeping in abandoned cars. But who are they? Hear their stories in my new 5-part podcast called Our Relatives. Listen on your favorite player.
This week, if you're like me, you're aware of 2 things. One, it's Valentine's Day, a day of supreme importance to many people, most notably women for some reason. And 2, what do you get a woman who does place some importance on that particular day? And thus, save yourself from getting into a whole whack of trouble instituted by some long-dead Catholic saint that has no idea how pissed off a Mohawk woman can get when she doesn't receive the proper present. To me, this holiday is like any other holiday with a religious name, like St. Patrick's Day. If you're Irish and Catholic, have fun, go nuts. On Valentine's Day, if you're Catholic and I guess like chocolate, go crazy. But I'm neither, so why do I get dragged kicking and screaming into its fiendish jaws? Still, there is the matter of the present. What do I get her? Do I get her flowers? Do I get her jewelry? Do I get her chocolate?
Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Drew Hayden Taylor, an award-winning playwright, author, and much more. That was a little bit of Drew's Views, former segment you used to do here. That was 23 years ago, that segment.
Whoa.
Kind of like Rick Mercer's rants. There was a whole bunch of them, but I figured the Valentine's Days coming up would be a good one. That's something you miss doing?
Holy mackerel, that goes way back. As you said, 23 years and 20 pounds ago. Yes, I still do the occasional essay or article for Globe and Mail and TVO. I still write those. Yes, I kind of do miss being on camera more, doing those kind of things, trying to explore a topic, be funny, shed some personal light on it. Yeah, those were fun times, and I do miss doing them. And I used to also do them on radio, so those were interesting times.
Well, personally, I think they should come back. We need somebody like that doing those little rounds.
I am here and I am available.
Okay, we'll let the boss know. You do a lot of television still. One of those is Going Native, which is about to return for its third season here on APTN. And you get to travel to super cool places, talk to super cool people. How did this show come to be?
Well, it started off with us, the crew, doing a series of 1-hour documentaries for CBC, for Passionate Eye or POV. We did one on the German fascination with Native people. We did one on a play I wrote called Cottagers and Indians about the wild rice controversy in the Kawartha Lakes, the larger issue being Native, non-Native conflicts involving land and water issue. And then we did, more recently, the last one we did was on the Pretendians. We did. And I think it was screening, the German one was screening here, and somebody here said, why aren't we doing this kind of thing? And so the executive producer, a guy named Paul Kemp, just said, well, we can. If you want us to do a show about the weird, the wonderful, the wacky, the fabulous things Indigenous people are doing in the wonderful, wacky, weird places across Canada, give us a show. So we were given a show called Going Native, and that's what we've been doing and having just an absolutely great time. The people we've met, the places we've been, just amazing.
Well, it does. I get the ratings. It does pretty well here on APTN, and obviously, because you must have got a big budget increase this upcoming season. You're off to Australia, New Zealand, Yucatan Peninsula,
the Arctic.
The Arctic. Any spots or topics over the past 3 seasons that really stick with you?
Well, season 2, we went down to the American Southwest, and we went to Mesa Verde. And we got a private tour to places the tourists don't usually go, and it was just amazing. It was off season. We had the place to ourselves, and it was just amazing walking around looking at this place that 1,000, 1,200 years ago people were living. That was a really special time. And of course, we got to go and hang with the Mayans in the Yucatan Peninsula for 2 weeks, and we were taken around. We went spelunking, cave diving, to see where the Mayans used to mine clay to make pottery. We saw paintings on the walls down there. In Australia, we went and learned how to do a haka, how to make Maori food by burying it. In Australia, we went to northern Australia, where we saw how strong Indigenous ecotourism is there. Right. The local Indigenous people are part of the whole tourism industry there, and it was nice to see. It was refreshing to see, right? And then being up in the Arctic and Tuktoyaktuk, and not being able to sleep at night because it was too hot. You don't expect that in the Arctic Circle, but it was a warm spell, and the houses are made to be warm, not to be cold. So at night, it's hot in here.
Well, it looks like the absolute dream job to be able to go around and do that. Of course, Going Native is far from the only television you've done over the years, and you mentioned some of that work for the Passionate Eye documentaries, including recently the Pretendians for the public broadcaster. Any of those projects really stick out for you?
Oh yeah, I love the Germans. I've done 20 lecture tours of Germany. And they kept bringing me over, and every time I went over, I would learn more and more about this obsession the Germans had with Native people. I mean, it was just weird, because the ultimate irony being I actually looked more German than Native, but they kept bringing me over, wanted me to lecture on Native culture, Native art, Native literature, Native humor, et cetera, et cetera. And then I went over with, I took one of my plays over there, and the director-actor, who also did documentaries, learned about this and thought this would be a fascinating documentary. We came back, put together some funding and team, and lo and behold, we did it. So that, of the 3 documentaries, they're all completely different. One is fun about the Germans and weird. The other one is kind of angry, the one about the wild rice controversy with people getting angry at each other. And Pretendians is just, I consider it a mystery film. You know, we go in, we explore this, and it's just a big mystery why this continues to happen.
You know, some of these issues that you talk about, the wild rice thing, certainly not just for Southern Ontario, around where you're from. Do you find going all these places that there's so many common threads between the Indigenous peoples that you meet?
Oh, completely. I mean, one of the things I find universal is, again, humor. Always coming back to that. Being to all these weird places and interesting things, and just the sense of humor, the connection to Mother Earth too. You know, what is there, 634 First Nation communities in Canada, and each one has its own special and unique relationship to Mother Earth. And I find that as I travel across the country and in the States and with other Indigenous people in different countries.
Awesome stuff, Drew. More to talk about. We just have to step aside for one last quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here with award-winning playwright, author, and broadcaster, Drew Hayden Taylor. Stick around.
Hello, I'm Rick Harp, host of APTN News Brief, a daily podcast version of the nightly broadcast of APTN National News. Available on all major podcast platforms, APTN News Brief is your quick way to hear the headlines every weekday morning. Learn more at aptnnews.ca/podcasts.
Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Drew Hayden Taylor. And Drew, you're a pretty lucky guy, I'd say, in that you get to work on the screen, writing books, plays on the stage. Any favorite for yourself?
It's theater that sort of gave me my full voice. I've wrote articles and essays before that were kind of fun, kind of interesting, and were really popular in the Globe for a long period of time. But I think I developed my voice as a playwright first, and so theater is a very special relevance for me. And then gradually, you know, I started working on television. I love working in television. You know, more people see a television episode and will probably see all of my plays put together. Yeah. And then I've come to novels and short stories later in my life when I'm more comfortable with the narrative form and prose. So I really enjoy novels because you really get to climb in and wrap it all around you, and it's a solitary effort, whereas theater is it starts off being solitary, but it ends up being a group effort.
Like we said, prolific writer, 30 plus works. You've said in interviews, though, you've written all these things with no formal training whatsoever in writing. Where do you think that urge to write comes from, and why you've been so good at it?
Well, I think, you know, all good writers are good readers, and all great writers are great readers. I'm an avid reader. I read books, and my whole house is just stacked with books. I think that has something to do with it. Every time you read a book, unconsciously, subconsciously, you learn sentence structure, you learn character arcs, you learn plot development, all these things, so that you can sit down and you can do it. Yeah, I've never taken a writing course in my life. I woke up one day and was a playwright. I woke up one day and wrote for television. I woke up one day and was a novelist. It's been very, very fortunate. There's been a lot of trial and error in that. Nothing has been perfect the first time, but I've managed to pull it off.
Pull it off, you have. Drew, we're all out of time, but congrats on the new book. Good luck with the sequel. Good luck with Going Native Season 3. Looking forward to it. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure, sir.
That is all the time we have for this week. I'm Dennis Ward. We'll see you back here on Face to Face in 7 days.